Chapter 1. Stop chasing motivation. Build discipline. The myth of the spark. Imagine a writer sitting at a mahogany desk. The room is silent, the lighting is perfect, and a fresh cup of coffee is steaming beside a blank page. The writer is waiting. They are waiting for a feeling. They call it the muse. They call it inspiration. They call it the spark. Hours pass. The coffee grows cold. The sun sets. The page remains white. Now, imagine a different writer. This writer works in a cubicle in a noisy newsroom. They have a headache. Their boss is yelling about a deadline. They don't feel inspired. In fact, they feel tired and irritated. But they sit down and they type. By 5 p.m., they have a finished article. The first writer is a slave to motivation. The second writer is a master of discipline. In our modern world, we have been sold a lie. We have been told that we should follow our passions, that we should wait for the right moment, and that if we don't feel fired up about a project, it's because we aren't aligned with our purpose. This is the most dangerous trap a person can fall into. Motivation is a chemical weather pattern. It is an emotional state. And like all emotions, it is temporary. If you want to be a person who finishes what they start, you must make a fundamental shift in your philosophy. You must stop chasing motivation and start building discipline. Why motivation fails you? To understand why motivation is unreliable, we have to look at the brain. Motivation is largely driven by dopamine, the anticipation chemical. When you first think of a new goal, say, starting a business or writing a book, your brain floods with dopamine. You feel a rush of excitement. You can see the finish line. You can hear the applause. This is the high of the start. But dopamine is designed to get you moving, not to keep you going. As soon as the task becomes repetitive, when you're on the 4th hour of a spreadsheet or the 10th revision of a paragraph, the dopamine disappears. The task is no longer new. It is no longer exciting. This is the moment 90% of people quit. They mistake the loss of excitement for a loss of purpose. They say, I just don't feel it anymore, or maybe this isn't for me. Discipline, however, is not a feeling. Discipline is the decision to continue even when excitement is gone. Discipline is the cognitive override of your emotional state. While motivation asks, do I feel like doing this? Discipline states, I'm doing this because I said I would. Repeat this phrase in your mind, for it is the foundation of everything that follows. Motivation starts things. Discipline finishes them. The athlete's secret. No negotiations. Look at the most successful people in the world, the elite athletes, the titans of industry, the master craftsmen. Do you think a gold medal swimmer wakes up every morning at 4:30 a.m., looks at a cold, dark pool, and thinks, I'm so motivated to jump into that water? Absolutely not. They are tired. Their muscles ache. Their brain is screaming at them to stay in the warm bed. But the elite performer has a secret. They do not negotiate with their mood. Most people treat their feelings as if they are a board of directors that needs to vote on whether or not to work today. Mood says no. Fatigue says no. Boredom says no. So, the work doesn't happen. A disciplined person, a finisher, treats their feelings like the weather. If it's raining outside, you might be annoyed, but you still go to work. You don't stay home just because it's cloudy. You recognize that your internal weather has nothing to do with your external work. Successful people rely on systems, not feelings. They have a schedule. They have a routine. They have a non-negotiable contract with themselves. When the clock strikes 9 a.m., they are at the desk. It doesn't matter if they are happy, sad, inspired, or bored. The desk is where they belong. The cost of the inspired-only life. If you only work when you are inspired, you are effectively a hobbyist. A professional shows up regardless. Think about the math of the inspired-only life. If you are a writer and you only write when you feel the spark, you might write 2 days a month. If you are an entrepreneur and you only build your business when you feel fired up, you will only work when things are going well. But life is mostly the middle. Life is mostly the grind. If you abandon your goals every time the boredom sets in, you will spend your entire life starting over. You will have 1,000 chapter ones and 0 final chapters. You will be a person of great potential and 0 results. The disciplined person understands that the magic happens in the work itself. Action often creates the motivation that you were waiting for. Have you ever noticed that once you start a task, even if you hated the idea of starting, you eventually find a rhythm? Action is the cause of inspiration, not the result of it. Your new commandment: act regardless of emotion. To become a finisher, you must learn to observe your emotions without obeying them. When the voice in your head says, "We can do this tomorrow," or "let's just check social media for 5 minutes," recognize that this is just a feeling. It is not a command. It is not the truth. It is simply a temporary biological state. The disciplined person acknowledges the feeling. I feel bored. I feel tired. I feel like quitting. And then they act anyway. This is the definition of mental toughness. It is the ability to bridge the gap between how you feel and what you do. The world belongs to the people who can do the work when they don't feel like it. The world belongs to the finishers. As we move through this book, we will dismantle the excuses your brain uses to stop you. But it all starts here, with this one hard truth: you do not need to feel like it. You just need to do it. Key lesson of Chapter 1. If you only work when inspired, you will abandon 90% of your goals. The disciplined person finishes because they act regardless of emotion. Core repetition. Motivation starts things. Discipline finishes them. Chapter 2. The dangerous habit of starting too many things. The seduction of the day one. There is nothing quite like the feeling of day one. On day one, everything is perfect. On day one, you have a brand new notebook with crisp, white pages. You have a fresh gym membership. You have a new business idea that feels like it's going to change the world. In this moment, you are a hero in your own mind. You haven't faced a single setback yet. You haven't encountered a difficult client, a sore muscle, or a technical glitch. In our modern culture, we are obsessed with day one. We celebrate the launch. We toast to the new beginning. We post on social media, so excited to announce I'm starting a new journey. And what happens? People like the post. They comment congratulations, or you've got this. Here is the danger. Your brain cannot tell the difference between the social validation of starting and the actual satisfaction of achieving. When you tell the world you are starting a project, your brain receives a massive hit of dopamine, the reward chemical. You feel like a winner before you've even done a single minute of hard work. This is the starter's high. And it is the primary reason why so many people have a graveyard of unfinished projects in their wake. They aren't addicted to results, they are addicted to the rush of the beginning. The false productivity trap. We live in an era of false productivity. We confuse activity with achievement. Consider the person who decides they want to get in shape. They spend 3 hours researching the best shoes. They spend another $200 on high-end supplements. They download 4 different fitness apps and spend their evening setting up their workout schedule. By the end of the night, they feel exhausted and productive. They think, "Wow, I really got a lot done today." But what did they actually do? They didn't lift a single weight. They didn't run a single mile. They didn't sweat. They performed the rituals of starting without doing the work of finishing. This habit is dangerous because it creates a dopamine loop. You start something new, you get the rush, and as soon as the work becomes difficult, as soon as the day one magic wears off, you look for a new day one to get that feeling back. You drop the gym and start a diet. You drop the diet and start a blog. You drop the blog and start a podcast. You are a serial starter. You have 10 different projects at 10% completion. You think you are a multi-talented Renaissance person, but in reality, you are just someone who is afraid of the messy middle. You are someone who is running away from the hard work of finishing. The mathematics of focus. Imagine you have 100 units of energy to spend. If you start 5 different projects, you can only give 20 units of energy to each. In a world that demands excellence, 20% effort is a recipe for mediocrity. You will have 5 average or below average results that never quite cross the finish line. Now, imagine if you took those same 100 units of energy and poured them into one single mission. When you focus on one thing, you reach a depth of understanding and a level of momentum that is impossible to achieve when you are fragmented. You move past the surface-level fun stuff and into the deep, transformative work that leads to completion. The most successful people in history weren't the ones with the most ideas. They were the ones with the most focus. They understood that every yes they gave to a new, shiny idea was a no to the project they were already supposed to be finishing. In a world that is constantly trying to distract you, with new trends, new technologies, and new opportunities, the most radical thing you can do is to stay the course. Repeat this truth: start less, finish more. The graveyard of good intentions. Take a look around your house. Look at your digital files. Look at your bookshelf. How many half-read books do you own? How many online courses have you purchased, watched 2 videos of, and never opened again? How many great ideas are sitting in your notes app from 3 years ago? These are not just unfinished tasks. They are psychological weights. Every unfinished project in your life is a broken promise to yourself. Every time you start something and abandon it, you are training your subconscious mind to believe that you are a quitter. You are reinforcing the identity of someone who tries things but doesn't do things. This is why starting too many things is a dangerous habit. It erodes your self-trust. When you finally do find a goal that truly matters, a voice in the back of your head will whisper, "Why bother? You won't finish this one either. You never do." To reclaim your power, you must stop the leak. You must stop the constant search for the new. You must learn to fall in love with the old, the project you've been working on for months, the goal that has become boring, the task that is no longer exciting. The rule of one. If you want to become a finisher, you must adopt the rule of one. From this day forward, you do not start a second project until the first one is finished. If you want to start a new book, you must finish the one you are currently reading. If you want to launch a new product, you must stabilize the one you currently have. This will be painful. You will see opportunities pass you by. You will see other people jumping on new trends. You will feel FOMO, the fear of missing out. But remember this: the person who finishes one thing is light years ahead of the person who starts 100 things. A finished okay project is infinitely more valuable than a perfect project that only exists in your head. The rule of one forces you to be honest about your time and energy. It forces you to prioritize. It forces you to realize that your life is finite and you only have enough heartbeats to finish a few great things. Don't waste those heartbeats on a dozen mediocre starts. Winners focus. Losers spray and pray. There is a term in business called the shiny object syndrome. It describes the tendency to chase every new idea that looks promising. It is the hallmark of the amateur. The professional knows that the grass is always greener on the other side because it's fertilized with lies. The new project only looks better because you haven't faced its problems yet. Once you get 50% into that new project, it will become just as boring and difficult as the one you are currently trying to escape. The winner says, "I don't care how shiny that new object is. I have a mission. I have a goal. I am a finisher." They understand that the real reward, the real dopamine, the real confidence, the real wealth, doesn't come from the day one announcement. It comes from the final day delivery. If you want to change your life, you don't need a new start. You need a finished end. Key lesson of Chapter 2. Winners understand that energy is finite. Starting creates a false sense of progress, but only completion creates value. To reach the top, you must narrow your focus. Core repetition. Start less. Finish more. Chapter 3. Accept that every goal gets boring. The illusion of perpetual progress. When we imagine success, we often picture a steady, upward climb. We imagine that every day will feel a little bit better than the last. We think that as we get closer to our goals, the excitement will naturally intensify until we cross the finish line in a blaze of glory. This is a hallucination. The reality of any significant achievement looks very different. It starts with a spike of excitement, followed by a sharp drop into what researchers call the messy middle. This is the phase where the novelty has completely evaporated. The new car smell of your project is gone. The social media likes from your initial announcement have stopped coming in. You are no longer a bold pioneer starting something new. You are just a person sitting at a desk, staring at a screen, or lifting a weight for the 1000th time. In this phase, the work isn't just hard, it is profoundly, deeply, and agonizingly boring. And here is the secret that no one tells you. This boredom is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are doing something right. The boredom threshold. Most people equate boredom with failure. They think, if I'm bored, I must not be passionate about this anymore. They assume that because the spark is gone, they have chosen the wrong path. So, they quit. They go back to the drawing board to find something exciting again. But high achievers, the true finishers, have a different relationship with boredom. They view boredom as the boredom threshold. They know that on the other side of that threshold lies mastery. Think about a professional pianist. To the audience, the performance is magical. But to the pianist, that performance is the result of 10,000 hours of playing the same scales over and over and over again. They have played those scales until their fingers bled. They have played them until they could do it in their sleep. They have played them when they were sick, when they were tired, and when they were so bored they wanted to scream. The difference between an amateur and a professional is that the amateur wants the magic without the monotony. The professional knows that the magic is the monotony, the anatomy of the messy middle. Why does every goal get boring? It's a biological certainty called hedonic adaptation. Our brains are wired to seek novelty. When we experience something new, our neurons fire rapidly. But as we repeat the action, our brain becomes efficient. It stops noticing the task. The excitement fades because the task has become a habit. This is the exact moment when most people fail. Let's look at the example of writing a book. Weeks 1 to 2, you are a visionary. You have the plot mapped out. You love your characters. You feel like the next great novelist. Month 3, you are in the middle of chapter 14. You realized your plot has a massive hole in it. Your characters feel wooden. You have to write a 5,000-word transition scene that is purely functional. It's not poetic. It's not exciting. It's just moving people from room A to room B. This is the boring middle. It is exhausting because it requires a massive amount of output with very little emotional input. You aren't getting the high of the start, and you aren't yet getting the relief of the finish. You are in the desert. If you cannot accept that the desert is a necessary part of the journey, you will never reach the oasis. You will spend your life wandering from one trailhead to the next, always turning back the moment the trees disappear and the sand begins. The monotony of excellence. Success is often described in high-octane terms, crushing it, hustling, explosive growth. But if you look at the daily lives of the world's most successful people, the words you would use to describe them are repetitive, consistent, and routine. An elite marathon runner's life is boring. They run. They eat. They sleep. They run again. A successful investor's life is boring. They read reports. They check numbers. They wait. They wait some more. A master programmer's life is boring. They debug lines of code. They test. They fail. They fix. The extraordinary results we see from the outside are simply the compound interest of boring work done behind the scenes. Excellence is not a singular act of genius. It is the ability to maintain a high standard of work long after the enthusiasm has died. When you accept that your goal will get boring, you take away the power of that boredom to stop you. You stop waiting for the feeling of inspiration and start focusing on the fact of the task. Strategy. Gamifying the grind. How do you stay in the game when the boredom becomes overwhelming? You change the metric of success. When you are in the messy middle, you cannot look at the finish line every day. If you are writing a 100,000-word book and you've only written 20,000, looking at the 80,000 words remaining will demoralize you. Instead, you must learn to gamify the daily process. Don't focus on the great novel. Focus on the 500 words. Don't focus on the $1 million business. Focus on the 5 sales calls. Don't focus on the perfect body. Focus on the 30 minutes of movement. Your goal in the middle phase is not to be brilliant. Your goal is to be present. You win the day by showing up and doing the repetitive work, even if that work feels mediocre. A boring workout is better than a missed workout. A boring page of writing is better than a blank page. The finish line is reached by the person who can tolerate the most boredom. The competitive advantage of boredom. There is a massive silver lining to the boredom of the middle phase. It is your greatest competitive advantage. Because most people quit when they get bored, the field of competition thins out significantly the further you go. In the beginning, there are thousands of people competing with you. Everyone wants to start. But by the middle, 80% of those people have disappeared. They've gone off to find the next new thing. By the time you get to the final 10% of a project, you are often standing alone. If you can train yourself to keep going when others are bored, you are already in the top 1% of your field. Your ability to endure the monotony of excellence is a superpower. While others are searching for hacks and shortcuts and new inspirations, you are building a foundation of finished work that they can never catch up to. Boredom is the filter. It separates the talkers from the doers. It separates the amateurs from the masters. Embracing the repetitive truth. You must reach a point where you expect the boredom. When it arrives, and it will, you should greet it like an old friend. You should say to yourself, here it is. The middle. This is where the real work begins. This is where I win. Stop looking for ways to make the work exciting again. Sometimes work isn't exciting. Sometimes it's just work. And that is okay. You don't need to be entertained by your goals. You need to be committed to them. The person who finishes is the person who is willing to do the unglamorous, repetitive, and quiet work that no one sees and no one cheers for. They understand that the reward isn't the feeling they have while doing the work. The reward is the person they become by completing it. Repeat this truth to yourself whenever the messy middle feels too long. Boring work done consistently creates extraordinary results. Summary of Chapter 3. Every goal has a life cycle, and the longest part of that life cycle is the boring middle. If you quit because the excitement is gone, you are not a victim of lost passion. You are a victim of a common psychological plateau. To finish, you must raise your boredom threshold. You must stop negotiating with your desire for novelty and start valuing the power of repetition. The finish line is not reserved for the most passionate people. It is reserved for the people who can work through the boredom without flinching. Core repetition. Boring work done consistently creates extraordinary results. Chapter 4. Train your brain to tolerate discomfort. The biological reflex of the quitter. Why is it so hard to sit in a chair and finish a difficult task? Why does the mind suddenly find the idea of cleaning the kitchen or checking email so incredibly attractive the moment the work gets hard? To understand why we struggle to finish, we must understand the lizard brain, the amygdala. For thousands of years, the human brain had one primary job: survival. To survive, the brain developed a radar for discomfort. In the wild, discomfort usually meant danger. Cold meant potential hypothermia. Hunger meant starvation. The physical strain of a hunt meant the risk of injury. Today, you aren't fighting saber-toothed tigers, but your brain is still using that same ancient radar. When you encounter a difficult problem in your business, or when you are staring at a complex spreadsheet, or when you are trying to learn a difficult new skill, your brain registers frustration. To your primitive brain, frustration is a form of pain. And its response to pain is always the same: escape. Quitting is rarely a logical decision. It is an emotional escape. It is a biological reflex to move away from a source of pain and toward a source of pleasure, like social media, food, or a simpler task. To become a finisher, you must realize that your urge to stop is not a signal that the work is impossible. It is simply your brain trying to protect you from the productive discomfort of growth. Discomfort is not danger. The first step in training your brain is a fundamental reframing of the sensation of difficulty. Most people encounter a mental wall and think, "This is too hard, I should stop," or "I'm not good at this." They treat discomfort as a stop sign. The finisher treats discomfort as a keep going sign. You must learn to distinguish between danger and discomfort. Danger is a signal to retreat. Discomfort is the sensation of a boundary being pushed. Think about weightlifting. If you feel a sharp, stabbing pain in your joint, that is danger, you should stop. But if you feel the slow, hot burn in your muscles, that is discomfort. That is the only place where muscle is built. The same is true for your mind. The frustration you feel when you can't solve a problem is the mental equivalent of the muscle burn. It is the exact moment your brain is growing. If you quit the moment it feels hard, you are essentially walking out of the gym before you've lifted any weights. Repeat this principle. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. The 40% rule. Elite performers, especially those in high-stress environments like the Navy SEALs, understand this better than anyone. They use what is often called the 40% rule. The rule states that when your mind tells you that you are finished, when you feel you are completely exhausted, totally frustrated, and physically unable to continue, you have actually only reached about 40% of your true capacity. The remaining 60% is locked behind a door labeled discomfort. Most people never see what they are truly capable of because they turn back at the 40% mark. They mistake the feeling of being done for the fact of being done. Finishers are people who have learned to negotiate with that 40% wall. They know that the first voice that suggests quitting is a liar. They have trained themselves to acknowledge the voice, smile at it, and then keep walking. They don't try to make the discomfort go away. They simply expand their capacity to carry it. Building the discomfort muscle. Discomfort tolerance is a muscle. If you haven't used it in years, it will be weak. You will give up at the slightest hint of boredom or difficulty. But, like any muscle, it can be strengthened through progressive resistance. You don't start by trying to work for 12 hours straight. You start by winning the 5-minute war. The 5-minute war. The next time you are working and you feel that sudden, sharp urge to quit, the moment you want to pick up your phone or close the tab, don't. Stay in the chair for exactly 5 more minutes. During those 5 minutes, don't worry about being productive. Just worry about staying. Sit with the frustration. Feel the itch to move, and don't scratch it. Watch the urge to quit like a wave in the ocean. Watch it rise, peak, and then inevitably subside. When you win those 5 minutes, you are sending a powerful message to your subconscious. I am the captain of this ship, not my impulses. Over time, 5 minutes becomes 10. 10 becomes 30. Eventually, you develop the stamina of the finisher, the ability to stay in the pocket of discomfort until the job is done. The escape hatches of the modern mind. We live in a world designed to help us avoid discomfort. We have instant food, instant entertainment, and instant validation. We have become discomfort averse. Because of this, our frustration threshold is lower than it has ever been in human history. We quit books because the first chapter is slow. We quit workouts because we're slightly tired. We quit businesses because the first marketing campaign didn't go viral. To train your brain, you must intentionally close your escape hatches. An escape hatch is anything you use to numb the discomfort of the work. It might be your phone, it might be researching, which is often just procrastinating, or it might be talking to a friend about your plans instead of doing them. When you sit down to finish a task, you must remove the possibility of escape. Put your phone in another room. Turn off the Wi-Fi if necessary. Create an environment where there are only 2 choices: do the work or sit in the discomfort of doing nothing. Most people will choose the work eventually, just to escape the boredom of doing nothing. But as long as you have an escape hatch, like TikTok or Netflix, within arm's reach, your brain will always choose the path of least resistance. High discomfort tolerance in action. Look at the great scientists, like Marie Curie or Thomas Edison. Their lives were defined by months and years of frustration. They spent 99% of their time failing. They spent their days in cold labs, dealing with toxic chemicals and repeated setbacks. Why did they finish? Because they had a high uncertainty tolerance. They could handle the discomfort of not knowing the answer yet. Most people quit because they can't stand the feeling of being confused. They feel that if they don't understand something immediately, they must be stupid or the task must be impossible. The finisher knows that confusion is the precursor to clarity. You have to be willing to feel stupid for a while to become a master. You have to be willing to feel frustrated to become a creator. Training your brain means learning to sit in the messiness of a project without rushing to resolve it just to feel comfortable. It means staying with the problem longer than anyone else is willing to. The reward of the hard path. There is a profound psychological reward that comes from working through discomfort. It's called the winner's effect. When you push through a period of intense difficulty and actually finish the task, your brain releases a cocktail of neurochemicals, not just dopamine, but testosterone and endorphins. This creates a state of earned confidence. This is a different kind of confidence than the day one excitement we talked about in Chapter 2. This is the confidence of a veteran. You know you can finish because you felt the urge to quit and you defeated it. You've been in the fire, and you didn't run. Every time you tolerate discomfort to finish a task, you are upgrading your mental hardware. You are becoming a person who can handle more weight, more stress, and more complexity. You are becoming someone who is unstoppable because the things that stop most people, boredom, frustration, and fatigue, no longer have power over you. Summary of Chapter 4. Quitting is an emotional escape from a biological sensation of discomfort. To be a finisher, you must rewire your response to that sensation. You must stop seeing frustration as a reason to stop and start seeing it as the burn of mental growth. Build your discomfort muscle through the 5-minute war. Close your escape hatches. Recognize that your brain is lying to you when it says you are done at the 40% mark. Success is on the other side of the I want to quit feeling. If you can stay when it hurts, you will finish when others fail. Core repetition. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. Chapter 5. Remove the option of quitting. The door left ajar. Imagine you are walking through a high-pressure, narrow corridor. Ahead of you is a heavy iron door, your goal. To get through it, you must push with every ounce of your strength. It is exhausting, it is hot, and your muscles are screaming. Now, imagine that behind you, there is an open emergency exit. It's cool, it's brightly lit, and it leads straight back to your comfortable living room. Every time you hit a resistance point with that iron door, your head turns. You look back at the exit. You think, I could just leave. I could try again tomorrow. I could just give up on this and go back to what I know. Because that exit is open, you only give the iron door 50% of your effort. You are trying to push it, but you are actually spending half of your mental energy debating whether or not to stay in the corridor. Most people fail to finish because they leave the emergency exit open. They treat their goals as preferences rather than necessities. They have a backup plan. They have an excuse ready in their pocket. And the moment the work gets hard, the mind, which is a biological machine designed to conserve energy, starts searching for that exit. To become a finisher, you must shut the door. You must lock it. You must throw away the key. The philosophy of burning the ships. In the year 1519, the Spanish explorer Hernán Cortés arrived on the shores of Mexico with an army of 500 men. They were facing an empire of hundreds of thousands. His men were terrified, exhausted, and mutinous. They looked back at their ships in the harbor, their plan B, and they thought about sailing back to the safety of Cuba. Cortés knew that as long as those ships existed, his men would never fight with the ferocity required to win. So, he gave a legendary command: burn the ships. As the smoke rose from the harbor, the choice disappeared. There was no retreat. There was no trying. There was only victory or death. By removing the option of quitting, Cortés transformed a group of frightened sailors into an unstoppable force. They finished what they started because they had no other choice. In your own life, you are likely surrounded by ships. You have safety nets. You have outs. You tell yourself, if this business doesn't work, I'll just get another job. Or, if I don't finish this book, it's not the end of the world. While these thoughts feel comforting, they are actually poison. They act as a slow leak in your resolve. When quitting remains an option, your mind will find an excuse to take it. But when quitting disappears, finishing becomes inevitable. The psychology of inevitability. Why does removing the option of quitting work? It has to do with a psychological concept called cognitive dissonance. Your brain wants your beliefs and your actions to match. If you are 50% committed to a task, your brain is in a state of conflict. It is constantly asking, should we keep going or should we stop? This internal debate causes decision fatigue. It drains the energy you should be using for the work. However, when you make an absolute, irrevocable commitment, the debate ends. Your brain stops asking "should I?" and starts asking "how can I?" When the back door is locked, your subconscious mind is forced to find a solution. It stops looking for excuses and starts looking for strategies. It shifts from a defense mindset, how to avoid pain, to an offense mindset, how to overcome obstacles. You have likely experienced this inevitability before. Think about a time when you had a hard deadline that you could not miss, perhaps a project for a boss you feared or a final exam in school. You didn't wait for motivation. You didn't negotiate with your mood. You finished because you had to. You created a situation where quitting was more painful than continuing. How to burn your ships today. You don't need to literally burn your belongings to apply this principle. You need to create commitment devices. A commitment device is a choice you make in the present that restricts your options in the future. 1. Financial stakes. One of the most effective ways to remove the option of quitting is to put your money on the line. If you want to finish a fitness program, pay for a high-end personal trainer in advance, someone who will charge you whether you show up or not. If you want to finish a book, sign up for a workshop where you lose your deposit if you don't submit your chapters. When it costs you $500 to quit, your brain suddenly finds the discipline to keep going. 2. Social accountability, the public declaration. Human beings are social creatures. We are wired to fear the loss of status. When you keep your goals a secret, you make it easy to quit because no one knows you failed. To burn the ships, tell the people whose opinion you respect exactly what you are going to do and when you are going to finish it. Better yet, post it publicly. The pain of having to admit you quit is often greater than the pain of doing the work. 3. The one-way gate. Create situations where you cannot go back. If you are starting a business, quit the side hustle that is your safety net. If you are writing a script, enter a contest with a firm deadline and a fee. By entering a one-way gate, you are forcing your future self to follow through on the promises made by your present self. The myth of the safety net. We are taught from a young age that having a backup plan is smart. We are told to keep our options open. But in the world of high performance and finishing, keeping your options open is just a polite way of saying remaining uncommitted. If you want to be sort of successful, then keep your safety net. If you want to be a master, if you want to be a person who delivers results that change your life, you must recognize that your safety net is actually a spider web. It catches you, but it also holds you back. It keeps you from ever exerting the 100% effort required to break through the hardest barriers. Most of the great achievements in history, the inventions, the masterpieces, the empires, were created by people who had their backs against the wall. They were people who had no plan B. They succeeded because they had to. Negotiating with the quitting voice. Even when you've burned your ships, the internal quitting voice will still talk to you. It will say, "You could just stop. It doesn't matter. No one is watching." When this happens, you must have a predetermined response. You don't argue with the voice. You don't try to reason with it. You simply point to the burned ships. You say, "The choice has already been made." The power of removing the option is that it saves you from decision fatigue. You don't have to decide to work every morning. You decided once, months ago, when you committed. The decision is a matter of history. You are simply the executor of that decision. When you treat finishing as a non-negotiable, your life becomes much simpler. It might not become easier, but it becomes clearer. There is only one direction, forward. There is only one outcome, completion. The freedom of the locked door. Paradoxically, removing the option of quitting provides a strange kind of freedom. When you have one foot in and one foot out, you are in a state of constant anxiety. You are always weighing the pros and cons. You are always wondering if you should be doing something else. This is mental torture. But when you commit fully, when you remove the exit, the anxiety disappears. You are no longer wondering if you will finish. You are only focused on how. This total immersion allows you to enter a state of flow that the serial quitter will never know. There is a deep peace that comes from knowing you are going to see a task through to the end, no matter what happens. You have simplified your world down to a single mission. Summary of Chapter 5. Quitting is an option that we keep as a safety net, but that net is actually what prevents us from soaring. The most effective way to ensure you finish a project is to make the cost of quitting higher than the cost of continuing. Burn your ships. Put your reputation, your money, and your time on the line in a way that cannot be undone. Stop keeping your options open and start locking the door behind you. When you remove the choice to stop, your brain will find the power to finish. Core repetition. When quitting disappears, finishing becomes inevitable. Chapter 6. The Identity Shift. Become a finisher. The invisible script. Every one of us carries an invisible script, a narrative we have written about who we are. When you look in the mirror, you don't just see your physical features. You see a set of attributes. You might say, I'm a creative person, or I'm bad at math, or I'm a procrastinator. These labels aren't just descriptions. They are the boundaries of your potential. They are the rules by which your subconscious mind operates. The biggest obstacle to finishing a project isn't a lack of time, money, or talent. It is the belief that you are the kind of person who doesn't finish. If you view yourself as a starter, someone who is great at the beginning but loses steam, then your brain will work tirelessly to prove you right. The moment a project gets difficult, your brain will say, see? This is just who we are. We start things, and then we move on. It's part of our personality. To become a finisher, you must perform an identity transplant. You must stop viewing finishing as a skill you are trying to learn and start viewing it as an identity you are claiming. Outcomes versus identity. Most people approach change from the outside in. They focus on outcomes. They say, I want to finish this book, or I want to complete this marathon. The next level down is processes. They say, I will write 500 words a day, or I will run 5 miles a day. But the deepest level of change, the level that actually lasts, is identity. Think about the difference between two people trying to quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, the first person says, no thanks, I'm trying to quit. This sounds like a positive statement, but it reveals a flawed identity. They still believe they are a smoker who is currently trying to do something else. Their identity is in conflict with their goal. The second person says, no thanks, I'm not a smoker. The difference is small, but profound. The second person no longer identifies with the behavior. Smoking is no longer an option for them because it doesn't fit who they are. The same applies to you. If you say, I'm trying to finish this project, you are leaving room for failure. You are telling yourself that trying is the goal. But when you say, I am a finisher, you have changed the rules of the game. A finisher doesn't try to finish. A finisher finishes because that is the only logical conclusion for a person with that name. The identity action loop. How do you change your identity? You cannot simply think your way into a new self-image. You cannot just repeat affirmations in the mirror and expect your life to change. Identity is built through evidence. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. When you finish a book, even a boring one, you are casting a vote for the finisher identity. When you complete a workout when you're tired, you are casting another vote. Conversely, every time you abandon a project, you are casting a vote for the quitter identity. Over time, these votes accumulate. If you have spent 10 years quitting everything you've started, your quitter identity has a landslide victory. You don't trust yourself because you have years of evidence that you are unreliable. To shift your identity, you must start a small wins campaign. You must begin providing your brain with undeniable evidence that you are a finisher. Start with things so small they seem insignificant. Finish the dishes before you go to bed. Finish the last 5 minutes of a podcast you're tired of. Finish a puzzle. Each time you cross that tiny finish line, say to yourself, that's what I do. I am a finisher. I complete what I begin. The language of the closer. Your words are the blueprints of your reality. Listen closely to the way you talk about your work. Do you use weak language? I'm hoping to get this done by Friday. I'll see if I can finish it. I'm trying to be more disciplined. This language is an exit strategy disguised as a conversation. It gives you a way out. If you don't finish, you can say, "Well, I tried," or "I hoped it would work out." The finisher uses the language of the closer. "I will finish this by Friday. This will be completed. I am a person who delivers." There is a weight to these words. They create a sense of internal cognitive dissonance if you don't follow through. When you declare yourself a finisher, your brain finds it physically and emotionally uncomfortable to leave a task incomplete. It feels like a violation of your character. It feels wrong. That wrongness is your greatest ally. It is the internal pressure that will keep you working when the rest of the world has gone to sleep. The professional's identity. Consider the difference between a hobbyist and a professional. A hobbyist works when the conditions are right. A hobbyist's identity is tied to the enjoyment of the task. If the hobby stops being fun, the hobbyist stops doing it. This is why most people have hobbies that are 20% finished. A professional's identity is tied to the delivery of the task. A professional plumber doesn't leave a pipe half fixed because he wasn't feeling the vibe that day. A professional surgeon doesn't stop in the middle of an operation because she lost her inspiration. Their identity is, "I'm the person who does the job from start to finish." You must adopt this professional identity toward your own goals. Whether you are writing a poem, building an app, or cleaning your garage, you must approach it with the solemnity of a professional. You are not playing at this. You are executing a mission. The mirror of integrity. At the end of the day, the most important person you have to face is yourself. When you finish what you start, you develop a quiet confidence. You don't need to brag or post about your goals on social media because you have nothing to prove to anyone else. You know, with absolute certainty, that if you decide to do something, it is as good as done. This is the ultimate power. Imagine walking through life knowing that your word is law. Imagine the lack of stress you would feel if you knew that laziness and distraction were no longer part of your DNA. People who see themselves as finishers have a different aura. They are more grounded. They are more reliable. They carry themselves with the posture of someone who has nothing to hide and nothing to fear. They have integrity, meaning their internal self and their external actions are an integrated whole. Practical exercise. Claiming the name. To begin this shift today, you must perform a ritual of identity. Pick one small, unfinished task that has been hanging over your head. It could be an unanswered email, a half-organized drawer, or a book with a bookmark stuck on page 50. Go to that task. Before you start, say out loud, "I am a finisher. I complete what I begin." Then, finish it. Do not stop for water. Do not check your phone. Do not look away until the task is 100% complete. When it is done, take a moment to feel the completion high. This is the feeling of your new identity taking root. You have just cast a vote. Tomorrow, you will cast another. Eventually, the quitter identity will starve to death from a lack of evidence. It will be replaced by a robust, ironclad self-image that will carry you to the end of every goal you ever set. Summary of Chapter 6. Finishing is not a behavior, it is a character trait. You must move away from the trying mindset and embrace the being identity. Your brain will always act in accordance with who you believe you are. By using the language of a closer, building evidence through small wins, and adopting the standard of a professional, you will rewire your subconscious mind. You will reach a point where quitting is no longer an option because it is no longer part of who you are. You are no longer a person who starts things. You are a finisher. Core repetition. I am a finisher. I complete what I begin. Chapter 7. Master the power of small daily progress. The fallacy of the giant leap. When we look at a finished masterpiece, a sprawling skyscraper, a 500-page classic novel, or a billion-dollar company, our brains play a trick on us. We see the result as a single, monumental event. We imagine that the person who built it must have possessed a superhuman burst of energy, a giant leap of productivity that carried them from the start to the finish in one heroic effort. This is a dangerous illusion. It is perhaps the most common reason people fail to finish what they start. Most people approach their goals with intensity. They decide to change their lives on a Sunday night, and on Monday morning, they try to do everything at once. They go from 0 exercise to 2 hours in the gym. They go from zero writing to trying to finish 3 chapters in a day. They burn hot, they burn fast, and within 72 hours, they burn out. The finisher knows a truth that the amateur refuses to accept. Massive goals are not achieved through giant bursts of effort. They are achieved through the accumulation of small, unremarkable actions repeated with religious consistency. To finish anything of substance, you must stop looking for the giant leap and start mastering the small step. The intensity versus consistency paradox. Imagine 2 people who want to get in shape. The first person is the intense type. They work out for 5 hours on Saturday. They push themselves until they can barely walk. They feel like a warrior. But because they are so sore and exhausted, they don't work out again for another 2 weeks. The second person is the consistent type. They work out for 20 minutes every single day. They never push themselves to the point of collapse, but they never miss a day. At the end of a year, who has the better body? Who has finished the transformation? The math is simple. The intense person worked out 26 times. The consistent person worked out 365 times. Intensity is impressive in the short term, but consistency is the hammer that breaks the stone. If you want to finish your project, you must lower your intensity to a level that you can maintain every single day. You must stop trying to be heroic and start trying to be reliable. Repeat this command: consistency beats intensity. The mathematics of compounding. In finance, compound interest is called the 8th wonder of the world. If you save a small amount of money and let it grow, eventually the interest starts earning its own interest. After a while, the growth becomes exponential. Progress works the exact same way. If you improve by just 1% every day, you will be 37 times better by the end of 1 year. But if you try to do 100% in 1 day, you will likely regress to 0 the next day. Think about writing a book. A standard non-fiction book is about 50,000 words. If you sit down and try to write a book, you will freeze. The goal is too big. The mountain is too high. You will get overwhelmed, you will procrastinate, and you will eventually quit. But if you commit to writing exactly 500 words a day, about 2 double-spaced pages, the math changes. At 500 words a day, you will have a finished manuscript in exactly 100 days. 3 months of small progress leads to a life-changing achievement. The 500-word rule can be applied to anything. Coding an app. Commit to 10 lines of clean code. Learning a language. Commit to 10 new words. Building a business. Commit to 2 sales calls. When the daily goal is small, it is too small to fail. It removes the excuse of being too tired or too busy. You can always find time for 500 words. You can always find time for 10 minutes. And when you stack those tiny wins day after day, you create an unstoppable momentum that carries you to the finish line. The psychology of micro-wins. Why is small progress so effective for finishing? It's because of how our brains process wins. Every time you complete a task, no matter how small, your brain releases a small dose of dopamine. This dopamine reinforces the behavior and makes you want to do it again. When you set a massive goal for the day and you don't reach it, your brain registers that as a loss. You feel discouraged. Your self-esteem drops. You start to associate your project with feelings of failure. But when you set a micro goal, a goal so small it's almost laughable, and you achieve it, your brain registers a win. You feel successful. You feel like a finisher. This creates a positive feedback loop. You start to look forward to the work because you know you are going to win today. The secret to finishing a long-term project is to keep your win-to-loss ratio as high as possible. You want to go to bed every night feeling like a person who kept their promise to themselves. Small daily progress is the only way to ensure that happens. The don't break the chain method. There is a famous story about the comedian Jerry Seinfeld. When he was a young comic starting out, he wanted to write better jokes. His strategy was simple. He bought a giant wall calendar and a red marker. Every day that he sat down and wrote new material, he put a big red X over that day on the calendar. After a few days, he said, "You'll have a chain. Just keep at it and the chain will grow longer every day. You'll like seeing that chain, especially when you get a few weeks under your belt. Your only job next is to not break the chain. Notice that his goal wasn't write a hit TV show. His goal wasn't even write a great joke. His goal was simply to not break the chain. When you focus on the chain, you stop worrying about the quality of the work and start focusing on the consistency of the work. This is vital because perfectionism is a common reason people quit. They think, if I can't do a great job today, I won't do it at all. The finisher says, I don't care if the work I do today is mediocre. I just care that I put the X on the calendar. I will not break the chain. Quantity leads to quality. If you write 500 words every day, some of those days will be brilliant. Most will be average. Some will be terrible. But at the end of the year, you have a finished book. The person who only wrote on brilliant days has nothing. Managing the mountain versus the step. The biggest enemy of finishing is overwhelm. Overwhelm happens when you stand at the base of the mountain and look at the peak. You see the thousands of feet of rock, the ice, the thin air, and the miles of climbing ahead. Your heart sinks. You feel small and incapable. To finish, you must learn to shrink your horizon. Don't look at the peak. Look at your feet. Your only world is the next 3 feet in front of you. Can you take one more step? Yes. Can you do it again? Yes. When you are working on a massive project, ignore the finished product for a while. Focus entirely on the daily increment. If you are building a house, don't think about the roof while you are laying the first brick. Just make sure that first brick is as level and as solid as a brick can be. Then, lay the next one. A house is nothing more than a collection of bricks laid correctly. A life is nothing more than a collection of days lived correctly. If you take care of the days, the years will take care of themselves. If you take care of the small progress, the finished goal will take care of itself. The power of the starting ritual. Small progress is often hard to start because the friction of beginning is high. We think about the work and we feel resistance. To overcome this, use the 2-minute rule. Tell yourself, I will just do this for 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, I am allowed to stop. I will just put on my running shoes and walk to the end of the block. I will just open the document and write 1 sentence. I will just wash 2 dishes. 90% of the time, once you have started, the resistance vanishes. The small progress becomes the starting ritual that gets you into a state of flow. The hardest part of any task is the transition from not doing to doing. By making the goal ridiculously small, you lower the barrier to entry until it's impossible to say no. Summary of Chapter 7. The secret to finishing a massive goal is to stop treating it like a massive goal. Break it down into the smallest possible daily increments. Focus on the chain of consistency rather than the intensity of the effort. Understand that 1% improvement every day leads to exponential results over time. Trust the math of compounding. Stop looking for heroic moments and start looking for habitual moments. A finished project is just a long string of small wins that refuse to stop. Core repetition. Consistency beats intensity. Chapter 8. Ignore the voice that tells you to stop. The silent saboteur. You are 3/4 of the way through a project. You've put in the hours. You've built the momentum. You can see the finish line, though it's still a distance away. And then, it happens. A voice rises in the back of your mind. It isn't a loud, screaming voice. It doesn't sound like a monster. It sounds like common sense. It sounds like your own best friend giving you advice. It says things like, you've done enough for today. You don't want to burn out. Is this project even that good? Maybe you should pivot to that other idea. You're exhausted. Your brain isn't working at 100%. If you keep going, you'll just make mistakes. No one will notice if you take a few days off. This is the voice of the saboteur. It is what author Stephen Pressfield calls the resistance. It is a universal human experience. Every artist, every entrepreneur, every athlete, and every finisher hears this voice. The difference between those who leave a trail of unfinished wreckage behind them and those who cross the finish line is not that the winners don't hear the voice. It's that the winners have learned to treat that voice as a liar. They have adopted a singular mental rule: do not negotiate with weakness. The central governor, your brain's speed limiter. To defeat this voice, you must understand where it comes from. It isn't a fault in your character. It is a biological mechanism. Exercise physiologist Tim Noakes developed a theory called the central governor. For decades, scientists believed that athletes collapsed from exhaustion because their muscles literally ran out of fuel or their hearts couldn't pump enough blood. But Noakes discovered something different. The feeling of exhaustion is not a physical limit. It is an emotional one. Your brain acts as a central governor. It monitors your heart rate, your heat, and your energy stores. Long before you are in actual physical danger, the brain starts sending signals of pain, fatigue, and the urge to stop. It does this to protect you. It wants to keep a reserve of energy in case a lion jumps out of the bushes. The voice that tells you to stop is simply your brain's speed limiter. It is trying to get you to return to a state of comfort and safety. When you are working on a difficult project, your brain perceives the mental strain as a threat to your energy reserves. It starts whispering quit to get you back to the couch, where you are safe, warm, and stagnant. The trap of negotiation. The most common mistake people make is trying to reason with this voice. When the voice says, "I'm too tired to finish this report," the amateur responds by negotiating. They say, "Well, maybe if I take a 30-minute nap, I'll feel better. Or, if I stop now, I promise I'll work twice as hard tomorrow." The moment you begin this dialogue, you have already lost. Why? Because you are negotiating with a terrorist. The voice of weakness doesn't want a fair deal. It doesn't want you to be rested. It wants you to stop. Every time you negotiate, you are giving that voice more power. You are validating the idea that your feelings should dictate your actions. Negotiation is a drain on your willpower battery. It takes an immense amount of mental energy to argue with yourself. By the time you've spent 20 minutes debating whether or not to keep working, you've exhausted the very energy you needed to actually do the work. Finishers don't negotiate. They have pre-decided. They have made the decision to finish long before the fatigue set in. When the voice arrives, they don't listen to its arguments because the courtroom is already closed. The verdict was reached on day 1. Mile 20, the mental wall. Ask any marathon runner about the wall. It usually happens around mile 20. At this point, the body has depleted its primary fuel source, glycogen. The legs feel like they are made of lead. The lungs feel like they are breathing fire. This is when the voice is loudest. It says, "Just stop and walk. Everyone else is walking. Your knees are going to be ruined. You've proven you can run 20 miles, that's enough." The runner who finishes is the one who has trained themselves to treat that voice as background noise. They treat it like a barking dog behind a fence. The dog can bark all it wants, but it cannot stop the runner. In your projects, you will hit a mile 20. You will reach a point where the project is no longer fun, you are tired of the subject matter, and you are doubting your own talent. This is the mental wall. When you hit the wall, you must realize that this is the exact moment the real work begins. Everything before the wall was just a warm-up. The person you become is forged in the 5 miles after the wall. Repeat this rule: do not negotiate with weakness. Personifying the voice. One of the most effective ways to ignore the voice is to give it a name and a personality. If you treat the voice as your own thoughts, you will take it seriously. But if you treat the voice as a pathetic, lazy, and unreliable character, you can distance yourself from it. Think of the voice as a heckler in a comedy club. A heckler is someone who sits in the dark and shouts insults at the person doing the hard work on stage. The heckler has no talent. The heckler has no skin in the game. The heckler is only there to feel important by trying to bring the creator down. When the voice says, "This isn't working, give up," you should respond as if you're talking to a heckler. "Oh, it's you again. Thanks for the input, but I have a job to do. Sit down and shut up." By personifying the voice, you realize that it is not you. It is a byproduct of your biology. You are the conscious observer who decides which thoughts to follow and which to ignore. You are the master of the house. The voice is just a noisy guest. The and technique. You don't have to make the voice go away to finish. This is a common misconception. People think they need to feel confident or energetic to work. You can finish while feeling like a failure. You can finish while being terrified. You can finish while being bored to tears. The secret is the word "and." I feel like quitting, and I'm going to type the next paragraph. I feel like I'm not good enough, and I'm going to finish this layout. I am incredibly tired, and I'm going to complete this set. The "and" technique acknowledges the reality of your feelings without giving them the steering wheel. It allows you to coexist with the voice of weakness without obeying it. The voice can talk all it wants, as long as your hands keep moving. The decision is a history, not a choice. The reason most people listen to the voice is that they believe they are making a choice every single minute. Should I keep writing? Should I stop? Should I keep writing? Should I stop? This constant choosing is what leads to quitting. A finisher views their commitment as a historical fact. If you committed to finishing a project by December 1st, then on November 15th, there is no choice to be made. The choice was made on the day you started. You are not a decision maker anymore. You are an executor. When a soldier is given an order, they don't sit in the mud and debate the merits of the order. They execute. You must treat your own goals with that same level of military discipline. You gave yourself an order. Now, you must execute it. The voice that tells you to stop is a mutineer. You do not negotiate with mutineers. You suppress them and stay on mission. The power of the final 10%. The voice is always loudest in the final 10% of a project. This is because the finish line is in sight, and the brain realizes that the pain of effort is almost over. Ironically, as you get closer to the end, the urge to relax increases. This is why many people get a project to 90% completion and then let it sit on their hard drive for 2 years. They stall out at the very end. When you hear the voice getting louder and more frantic, use it as a signal. It means you are close. The governor is panicking because you are about to succeed. When the voice screams, you must move faster. Finishers know that the last 10% requires as much energy as the first 90%. They don't coast to the finish line. They sprint through it. They ignore the voice's plea for a victory lap and stay focused until the very last period is typed, the last bill is sent, or the last box is packed. Summary of Chapter 8. Inside every person is a voice that seeks comfort, safety, and the path of least resistance. This voice is a biological relic designed to protect you from perceived strain. But you are not your biological impulses. You are the architect of your life. To finish what you start, you must learn to recognize the central governor and ignore its false reports of exhaustion. You must stop the habit of negotiating with your mood. You must treat the voice of weakness like a heckler and keep your eyes on the stage. The next time that voice suggests you stop, do not argue. Do not explain. Do not defend. Just keep moving. Core repetition. Do not negotiate with weakness. Chapter 9. Understand the power of completion. The psychological ghost of the unfinished. Have you ever had a song stuck in your head? Not the whole song, but just a single line or a melody that loops over and over again. This happens because the brain hates incompleteness. It is a phenomenon known in psychology as the Zeigarnik effect. In the 1920s, psychologist Bloomer Zeigarnik noticed that waiters in a busy cafe could remember complex, unpaid orders with perfect clarity. However, the moment the bill was paid and the task was finished, the waiters completely forgot the details. Their brains had let go of the information because the loop was closed. This effect reveals a profound truth about your mental energy. Every unfinished project in your life is an open loop that is draining your cognitive battery. When you have a half-finished book, a half-built website, or an unresolved conversation, your brain doesn't just forget about it when you move on to something else. It keeps that task in the background, like an app running on a smartphone that you forgot to close. It creates a subtle, persistent hum of anxiety. It creates mental clutter. This is why starters are often so stressed. They feel overwhelmed not because they have too much to do, but because they have too much left undone. The power of completion is that it closes the loop. It releases the ghost of the task and frees up that mental energy for your next mission. When you finish, you don't just get a result. You get your brain back. The self-trust bank account. We often talk about confidence as if it's a magical quality some people are born with. We see the confident entrepreneur or the calm athlete and think, I wish I had their self-belief. But confidence is not a gift. Confidence is an accounting system. Every time you tell yourself you are going to do something, I'm going to finish this report tonight, or I'm going to work out for 30 minutes, you are making a promise to yourself. When you follow through and finish, you are making a deposit in your self-trust bank account. When you have a high balance in this account, you have confidence. You trust yourself to handle challenges because you have a mountain of evidence that you are a person of your word. However, every time you quit, every time you leave a project at 90%, and every time you try something but don't finish it, you are making a withdrawal. If you do this long enough, your account goes into debt. You stop believing your own promises. When you say, I'm going to start a business, a voice in the back of your head laughs and says, no, you're not. You didn't even finish that online course you bought last month. The power of completion is that it is the only way to repair your self-trust. Each finished task, no matter how small, is a payment toward your debt. As you begin to finish more consistently, your internal credit score rises. You start to move through the world with a different posture. You aren't hoping to succeed. You expect to succeed because you know you are closer. The snowball of momentum. There is a reason the phrase success breeds success is so common. It describes the law of momentum. In physics, it takes a massive amount of energy to get a heavy object moving from a standstill. But once it is moving, it requires very little energy to keep it going. In fact, a heavy object in motion becomes difficult to stop. Finishing works the same way. The first few times you force yourself to finish a difficult, boring task, it will feel like you are pushing a boulder uphill. It will be agonizing. But something happens the moment you cross the finish line, the completion high. When you finish a task, your brain releases a surge of dopamine and serotonin. This isn't the cheap dopamine of a social media like. This is the hard-earned dopamine of achievement. It feels cleaner. It lasts longer. This completion high creates a psychological appetite for more. You finish a small project, and suddenly the medium-sized project doesn't look so intimidating. You finish the medium-sized project, and you feel ready to tackle the giant one. Finishers don't have more willpower than you. They just have more momentum. They have tasted the reward of completion so many times that their brain is now wired to pursue the finish line. They aren't running away from the work. They are running toward the win. Repeat this truth. Completion builds momentum. The reputation of a closer. In the marketplace, starters are a dime a dozen. The world is overflowing with people who have great ideas and big plans. If you want to be remarkably successful, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You don't need to be the most creative. You simply need to be the person who delivers. In every industry, there is a small elite group of people known as the closers. These are the people who, when given a task, will see it through to the end regardless of the obstacles. They don't make excuses. They don't bring back stories of why it didn't work. They bring back results. A closer has a reputation that is worth more than any degree or certification. Clients want to work with them because they know the project won't stall. Bosses want to promote them because they can set it and forget it. Partners want to build with them because they are a foundation, not a question mark. When you become a finisher, your external value skyrockets. You become a rare resource. In a world of flaky, distracted, and uncommitted people, the person who finishes what they start is a king. Finishing as a spiritual practice. Beyond the money and the confidence, there is a deeper, almost spiritual power in completion. To finish something is to bring it into being. Until a project is finished, it only exists in the realm of potential. Potential is a ghost. It is a what if. It has no power to change the world. A half-written book cannot inspire a reader. A half-built house cannot shelter a family. A half-formed business cannot provide jobs or solve problems. When you finish, you are performing an act of creation. You are taking an idea out of your head and manifesting it into the physical world. You are making your mark on reality. There is a profound sense of peace that comes from a job well done. It is the peace of knowing that you did not leave your best work inside you. You gave it everything you had, and you saw it through to its conclusion. This is the difference between a life of regret and a life of mastery. The mirror test. I am someone who delivers. Imagine waking up every morning, looking in the mirror, and knowing, with 100% certainty, that you are going to do exactly what you say you're going to do. Imagine the lack of anxiety. Imagine the lack of imposter syndrome. Most imposter syndrome is actually just a lack of finished work. You feel like a fake because you haven't delivered the results yet. You feel like a fraud because you know how many projects you've abandoned in the dark. The cure for imposter syndrome is completion. You cannot feel like a fraud when you are standing on a mountain of finished work. The work speaks for itself. It is your shield against the world's criticism and your own self-doubt. Completion transforms you from a consumer to a producer. It transforms you from a critic to a creator. It transforms you from a victim of circumstance to a master of your fate. The 99% is 0% rule. In the world of the finisher, 99% is the same as 0%. If you are building a bridge and you finish 99% of it, you still can't drive a car across it. If you are running a race and you stop 1 foot before the finish line, you haven't run the race. Amateurs celebrate getting close. They say, "I almost finished it," or "I'm basically done." The professional knows that the value is only unlocked at 100%. When you understand the power of completion, you stop settling for almost. You become obsessed with the final inch. You realize that the difference between nothing and everything is that final push to the end. Summary of Chapter 9. Completion is the most powerful tool in your psychological arsenal. It closes open loops, restores your self-trust, creates unstoppable momentum, and builds a world-class reputation. Stop viewing finishing as a burden. Start viewing it as a release. Every time you finish a task, you are gaining a new level of power. You are shedding the weight of the unbegun and the unended. The completion high is waiting for you. The reputation of a closer is waiting for you. But you must cross the line to claim them. Core repetition. Completion builds momentum. Chapter 10. Build a life defined by finished goals. The sum of a life. At the end of your days, when you look back at the long arc of your journey, your life will not be measured by the ideas you had. It will not be measured by the potential you possessed. It will not be measured by the many things you almost did. Your life will be the sum of your finished goals. There is a profound and heavy difference between a person who lived a life of intentions and a person who lived a life of results. The world is full of people who intended to write a book, intended to start a business, and intended to get in shape. These intentions are like clouds. They take up space in the mind, they look beautiful for a moment, but they leave no lasting mark on the earth. A finished goal, however, is like a stone. It is solid. It can be built upon. When you finish a task, you have created a permanent piece of reality. You have moved from the realm of thinking to the realm of being. To build a life defined by completion is to choose a path of mastery, influence, and peace. It is to move from the frantic, scattered energy of the starter to the calm, concentrated power of the finisher. The graveyard of unfinished dreams. In every person's mind, there is a graveyard. It is filled with the tombstones of projects that were abandoned when they got boring. It is filled with the ghosts of businesses that were never launched because the owner was waiting for the right time. It is filled with the dust of skills that were half-learned and then forgotten. The tragedy of the unfinished life is not that people fail. Failure is honorable. It is a finished attempt. The tragedy is that people quit. When you quit, you leave a part of yourself behind. You leave a what-if that haunts you. Every unfinished project is a weight on your soul. It creates a subtle, underlying sense of regret that colors your self-image. It makes you feel like a spectator in your own life, watching other people who might have less talent than you, cross finish lines that you abandoned. If you want to live a life free of regret, you must adopt the finisher's creed. You must decide that you would rather finish a failed project than leave a perfect one incomplete. Because a finished failure teaches you something, but an unfinished project only drains you. Talent is common. Finishers are rare. We often worship at the altar of genius. We believe that the people who change the world are those with the highest IQs or the most raw talent. But history tells a different story. History is written by the stubborn. Many of history's most successful individuals were not the most naturally gifted in their fields. Thomas Edison was not the most brilliant physicist of his time, but he was the one who was willing to finish 10,000 failed experiments to get to one working light bulb. Ulysses S. Grant was not the most brilliant military strategist of the American Civil War, but he was the one who understood that the art of war is simple enough. Find out where your enemy is, get at him as soon as you can, and keep moving on. He was a finisher. The world is littered with talented losers. People who are smart, creative, and articulate, but who never deliver anything. They are the people who are always working on something new, but never have anything to show for the old things. Conversely, the finishers of the world are the ones who get the promotions, build the wealth, and leave the legacies. They are the ones who understand that 100% effort on one project is worth more than 10% effort on 10 projects. Mastery is not about knowing everything. It is about finishing the thing you are currently doing. The mastery loop, the reward of completion. When you build a life defined by finished goals, you enter what is called the mastery loop. Most people think that mastery comes from studying. But true mastery comes from the cycle of completion. When you finish a project, you see the entire process, from the initial spark of an idea, through the boredom of the middle, across the discomfort of the obstacles, and over the final line. Each time you complete this cycle, your skill ceiling rises. You learn things at the 95% mark of a project that you can never learn at the 50% mark. You learn how to polish. You learn how to deal with the fear of judgment. You learn how to actually ship your work to the world. A person who has finished one project has learned more than a person who has started 20. The finisher develops a tactical intuition for how to get things done. They become efficient. They become effective. They become the kind of person that others rely on because they have proven that they can navigate the entire journey, not just the easy parts. The ripple effect of one finished goal. You might think that finishing your current small goal, writing that report, finishing that workout program, or cleaning that basement, doesn't matter in the grand scheme of your life. You are wrong. Success is a ripple effect. When you finish one thing, you change the way you see yourself. That finished goal becomes a lighthouse of evidence. The next time you face a challenge, you don't look back at a graveyard of failures. You look back at a trophy room of completions. This confidence ripples out into every area of your life. It changes how you speak in meetings. It changes how you parent your children. It changes the level of goals you are willing to set for your future. A life defined by finished goals is a life of increasing scale. Once you prove you can finish a small goal, you earn the right to tackle a bigger one. Eventually, you find yourself finishing things you once thought were impossible. But it all started with the discipline to finish the boring task that was right in front of you today. Your new architecture. The daily life of a finisher. As you close this book and step back into your life, how do you live as a finisher? You must build an internal architecture that supports completion. 1. The definition of done. From now on, never start a task without a clear definition of done. Don't say, "I'm going to work on my business." That is vague and unfinishable. Say, "I'm going to finish the 3-page marketing plan." When you know exactly where the finish line is, your brain can focus its energy on getting there. 2. The no-start list. To be a finisher, you must be a ruthless refuser. You must have a list of things you will not do, so that you have the energy to finish the things you must do. Protect your finishing energy like it is gold. Don't let new and shiny ideas steal it from you. 3. The ritual of the final 5%. Develop a ritual for the end of a project. When you are 95% done, and you feel the urge to coast or move on to something else, that is your power hour. That is when you double your focus. Finish the last details with more excellence than the first details. Cross the line with your head up. 4. The identity affirmation. Daily, remind yourself who you are. I am a finisher. I complete what I begin. This is no longer a goal. It is your fundamental nature. It is the filter through which you view every invitation, every challenge, and every day. The final principle: your future is built by what you finish. We often think of the future as something that happens to us. We wait for opportunity to knock. We wait for luck to find us. But your future is not a lottery. Your future is a construction site. Every brick you lay and finish becomes a part of the foundation you stand on tomorrow. If you only lay half bricks, you will never have a floor to stand on. You will spend your life treading water. But if you finish your tasks, day after day, week after week, you are building a tower. With every finished goal, you are rising higher. You are gaining a better view of the world. You are creating a platform of earned success that no one can take away from you. The opportunities you want, the money you desire, the respect you crave, and the peace of mind you seek are all located on the other side of your unfinished projects. They are waiting for you at the finish line. Do not look for a new start. You don't need a new beginning. You need a completed end. Look at your life. Look at the tasks you have currently open. Pick the one that matters most. Ignore the boredom. Ignore the voice that tells you to stop. Ignore the distraction of new ideas. Finish it. And then, finish the next one. And the one after that. Build a life that isn't defined by what you wished you could do, but by the undeniable, physical evidence of what you have done. Become the person who delivers. Become the person who closes the loop. Become a finisher. Because at the end of the day, your legacy is not what you started. Your future is built by what you finish. Core repetition, final. Motivation starts things. Discipline finishes them. Start less. Finish more. Consistency beats intensity. I am a finisher. I complete what I begin. The end.